Hello and welcome to HM Family Life, where Frank and Angie offer commentary and perspectives on what it's really like to live abroad. Retirees head to Latin America, where middle-class money can buy upper-class lifestyle. There's been a slew of articles in the last month from various publications on this subject. This one's in the business section of St. Louis Post-Dispatch. It says that, the title says retirees heading to Latin America. And then we quickly, in the article, go to Cuenca, Ecuador, which I find interesting. So this article focuses on Cuenca, Ecuador out of all of Latin America, but Cuenca is on the cutting edge of a modern trend, providing a haven for U.S. retirees. Who have found themselves unwilling or unable to live out their golden years at home. The growing wave of expats reshaping the face of communities throughout the Americas. It says that the number of retirees, the Social Security Administration was sending 380,000 retirees checks abroad, but that 10 years later it's up 50%. That was in 2014. So that means that the number of retirees 10 years ago abroad that the Social Security check was sending payments to must have been around 250,000, because 50% of that would have been 125,000, and when added to the 250,000, that would make around 375,000, which is close enough without using a calculator. And so we're talking about 125,000 additional retirees in a 10-year period, which is 12,000 per year, which is a considerable number. I'm not sure what constitutes a trend, however, very modern trend. Cuenca is on the cutting edge of the trend. Well, let's look at that. In the Americas, records show seniors are flocking to Canada, Mexico, Colombia, the DR, and Ecuador. But the article is focusing on Cuenca, Ecuador. And it tells you all the wonderful things about Ecuador. According to the U.S. government, 2,850 retirees receiving benefits there. But the city of Cuenca says there's almost 10,000 retirees, foreign retirees, most of them Americans from Texas and Florida. Then it talks about a specific couple that look like they're super healthy. They're in their 70s and they have the lean look of people whose principal mode of transportation is walking and a sense of adventure. They had previously retired in Central Florida, Georgia, Alaska, South Carolina, and Panama before settling on Ecuador. Because, this is significant, it was beautiful and cheap. Cheap. We could have survived financially in the United States if we had moved to a more rural area. All right, well, there's an assumption here, and in order to just barely survive, you'd have to move to a rural area. I have difficulty with that one. Let's see, here we go. I know of some people that were living in this house right here on $1,500 a month, and what you can't see in the picture is that there's 3.5 acres attached to that. This is a 40-foot pool, by the way. Lots of pool area. 3 nice peaceful acres on a dead-end road, walking distance to Big Water Lake, where there were lots of things to do, things like picnicking, boating, swimming. Okay, so they could have survived financially if they would have moved to a more rural area, according to them. Cuenca, a city of about 350,000 people, they found robust public transportation. I guess that would include taxis, as most foreigners use taxis. We use buses every single week, and we do see a couple of foreigners here and there, but we really don't see a whole lot of them on the public buses. It's a place where their 2-bedroom, 2.5-bath apartments cost less than $400 a month. So they found that for about $1,500 a month, they can live a solidly upper middle class lifestyle, dining out frequently and traveling. Americans are really big about the dining out. Although most Americans that we see dining out, they prefer to dine out in the upscale, more expensive restaurants. In the United States, we couldn't afford to go anywhere. Well, let's take a look at what this article on Wikipedia says. Let's define upper middle class. This says the professional class, also called upper middle class, have household incomes commonly exceeding $100,000 per year. Some people say that the upper middle class have great autonomy in the workplace, are more satisfied with their careers. Well, they have more income, that's what we're talking about here. Their upper middle class is between $100,000 and $350,000 per year. So the middle class, the Pew Research Center defines the middle income as including adults, families of 3, with an income between $37,000 and $113,000. So that's the middle class. Somewhere around $3,000 a month and $10,000 a month. That's the middle class. Now, the reason there's such a disparity is because, as I always say, it depends on where you're coming from. In order to be a middle class in New York or Florida, or even big city Texas, because Texas is so huge in and of itself that it's got some off the beaten path areas that are totally different than the big metro areas. So the incomes in the big cities of Texas, California, New York, they're going to have to range more around the higher end, whereas the rest of us from middle America can be considered middle class in the lower ends, 30,000, more the median range, the 30 to 50,000 range. Here we see that the United States median GDP or household income is $57,300. The Urban Institute defines middle class as earning between $30,000 and $100,000 for families of 3. The GDP per capita for the United States household income is $57,000, which goes to show you that even when you're almost at half of that, it is possible to be in the middle class, just depending on where you live. Even in the United States, even in North America, there is that much of a disparity in living costs. So this makes me question, or it should make anyone question, the assumption in this article that in order to, we could have survived financially if we had moved to a more rural area. I don't believe that the people that this is referring to, that are referred to as middle class, necessarily live way out in the boonies and sit home all day and do nothing. I wanted to kind of add some notes to this part here where it says there are 10,000 retirees just in Cuenca. We discussed that according to the Social Security figures, 12,500 people per year were going to approximately 5 havens in the Americas, but we really don't know. They say this is where the retirees are going. There's different reports that say different things, but some people say Canada, some reports say Canada, Mexico, Ecuador, Colombia, Dominican Republic. Panama is also on that list. Nicaragua is on that list. So if you look at the number of retirees, the total number of retirees over 10 years was 125,000, and that breaks down to 12,000 per year over, say, 5 to 10 havens. That puts it at somewhere between 1,200 to 2,500 people per year per haven. Over a 10-year period, that would suggest 25,000 people just in Ecuador. Of course, there is an attrition ratio. If there's only 10,000 in Cuenca, the majority of the expats we know do come to Cuenca, which is interesting because a lot of the retired folks are kind of shy away from big city Quito. A lot of them prefer Cuenca because it is smaller, a lot smaller than Quito. But it's interesting because there is a certain amount of attrition, so there's kind of a revolving door there going on. Based on these numbers, it would appear to be the case, although there's a lot left out in this conversation that we could discuss, like people that aren't on Social Security. This does blow away that number that you see being parroted around forums here in Ecuador, that there's only 4,000 gringos. If the city of Cuenca itself says that their census says there's 10,000, then that makes you wonder what the real number is. So then we could have survived, but if we moved to a rural area, but we wanted to eat out a lot. We found a robust public transportation. It must refer to taxis, as again, I don't see a whole lot of expats on buses. It's really hard to get on buses. It's a lot of the older retirees it's uncomfortable. It's a place where a 2-bedroom, 2.5-bath apartment costs less than $400. I would certainly hope so. Ecuador's median household income for 2016, last year, is still at 11,000. That's 11,000 in a year. For a household in Ecuador. So that breaks down to around $900 a month. Without using a calculator, you would imagine that $1,100 a month, if your rent is 30%, basic rule of thumb, or 1/3 of your income, then $400 is just about right. However, a lot of families need way more than just a 2-bedroom. So this 2-bedroom thing is more of a retiree need than it is a family need. Ecuador is a country of families, lots of families here with plenty of children. So they need to be able to rent for $400 or less and house their whole family, not just a couple. The minimum wage in Ecuador for a couple of years ago was still $354. It could have gone up a few dollars from there, but I just talked to some workers just a couple of months ago here in Salinas, and they were making around $350, $360 in a month. So even at $300 a month for rent, that is considered very high for Ecuadorian workers. Now, I'm not talking about business people and such, but if we're going to talk about workers, then for them that's considered clearly pretty high. But even going by the rule of thumb here of $900 a month, as an average, even going by that rule, a 1/3 rule of thumb, was still around $300 in rent. So no matter how you slice it, countries across the hemisphere are trying to woo U.S. retirees. Mexico, Panama, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and others, making it easy for seniors to set up shop. But city officials say Cuenca is something of an accidental hotspot. Well, okay, I'm just wondering, this article and the slew of articles that have been coming out in the last month or two are all the same. They have these titles like Retirees Head to Latin America, which is a huge area. Okay, so according to our friends at Google, this says that this is the map of Latin America, and it looks like we've got whole continents here included in Latin America, coming all the way from Mexico, Central America, and all of South America, and even certain islands. They are Latin. Cuba, Haiti, Puerto Rico, they're all Latin. So it says retirees are heading to Latin America, obviously a huge area, but then in the first sentence, colonial town of Cuenca. What do you make of that? And so these articles are focusing and zeroing in on Cuenca, and yet, when you have all these articles coming out on what a wonderful place to retire Cuenca is and how cheap it is, how is that accidental? Cuenca never wanted to attract retirees. This has been going on for 10 years. This is 2017, said the Director of International Relations. In fact, we're facing problems over how to deal with a phenomenon we aren't responsible for creating. The city is trying to combat fears, local fears. That would be from locals, that the retirees are driving up land prices and bleeding the public health care system. Language barrier is a source of irritation. Well, when you go to Latin America, you need to learn Latin. Some restaurants and neighborhoods seem like English-only spaces. The city owes some of its popularity to an economic crisis and the socialist policies of a president with penchant for bashing the United States. In 1999, Ecuador suffered a financial and banking meltdown that forced millions to go to the States and Europe looking for jobs. Well, the President, Correa, stepped down last month, poured the nation's oil wealth into hospitals and infrastructure. Well, that's what countries need. U.S. retirees, they need infrastructure. U.S. retirees who used to be slaves to their autos rave about the 12-cent bus rides. I don't know about that. I think that there are some, but anyway, the bus is going to be on its route, and it's going to pick up whoever's on the road, and whoever's got the money gets to pay. I'm not seeing that the retirees are really, that's what's there, and they pay for it. That's the fee. If you want to raise the fee, go ahead if you're not cutting it. I don't know, this is kind of a strange thing to say in an article like this. Retirees who used to be slaves to their automobiles. I would like to do a survey about how many retirees own automobiles in Cuenca. I think you'd be surprised how many retirees come to Ecuador and buy cars. I might be surprised. Congresswoman in Ecuador said it was ironic U.S. citizens steeped in capitalist values were attracted to a country that embraced socialism. Well, hold on a minute. A lot of these people are retirees on Social Security. That means they worked at jobs. Now, when you use a word like capitalist values, don't Ecuadorians have jobs? Capitalist values, is that That's kind of a confusing sentence. Ironic that U.S. citizens steeped in capitalist values were attracted to a country that embraced socialism. Well, okay, in general, I would question whether retirees on Social Security are capitalists. I guess that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting. A capitalist is normally not defined as somebody that works at a job all their lives and then takes their Social Security. That was attracted to a country that embraces socialism. I'm not sure if people really understand what that means. A lot of people are being told that Ecuador isn't really socialist. All over YouTube. There's all kind of YouTubers and people that promote these areas saying that it's more capitalist and socialist. We're a city that's become a destination for older adults to enjoy their retirement years precisely because of all of our public services. Well, the idea that a service is public, the transportation to public health, it's all part of the quality of life. Well, I don't know. This article is kind of like talking out of both sides of your mouth. On the one hand, it says that how cheap it is to live in Cuenca, Ecuador. It says that retirees want to go to Latin America, but then it focuses on Cuenca, Ecuador. And then it says how the retirees are responsible for putting a strain on the city services. I've made videos on buses. We have so many videos while we're on buses and trams. See if you can pick out in any of those videos any retirees on the buses. Like I say, I see one or two here and there, but this is the way this article is slanted is really makes one wonder. The estimated average monthly benefit for retired workers in the USA in 2016 is $1,341. So these people have worked all their lives so that they can receive $1,341. If they're a couple, they're going to have twice that much. In order for them to live on a middle class income, which this would be around $2,600 times 12 months, around $30,000, which is on the lower end of the... So there are different reports that say what the incomes are. Some say that 35 to 75 is lower middle class and 100 or more is upper middle class, but that leaves out the middle income class, which is around, we've quoted earlier, 30 to 100. And the average Social Security check for a couple falls at the lower end of that at about $30,000. And yet I know of at least one whole family, which does not comprise of a couple. It was a family of 5 adults. We're able to live on $1,500 a month, which is much, much lower than 2 Social Security checks, average Social Security checks. If you considered it was 5 adults, then it was much, much lower. This talks about what does it cost to live in Panama. We've made a few videos about what it costs. First sentence, it's not as cheap as many expats might expect. Lifestyle costs between $1,000 and $3,600. We've seen what it would take to live on $1,000 in Panama. You would be in a 1-bedroom, a very small place, kind of out, not very close to things. You'd have to have a car, not much of a yard. You wouldn't be able to go anywhere. The lower ends on these quotes is questionable. If you're going to talk about the lower ends on this, then you might as well talk about living in the States on your income. But if you took an average of between $1,000 and $3,600, you'd add them together, that'd be $4,600. If you half it, which is what an average is, half of 46 is $2,300 a month, which is right around under $30,000 a year, which puts you at the lower end of the middle class according to the figures we've just studied. That says depending on what city you choose. However, down here it says average cost of living in Panama $1,100 to $8,000, which is a huge disparity. If we add those together, it's $9,100 divided by 2 is around $4,600 a month. And for that, you'd be nearing the GDP per capita of the United States. $4,600 a month without using a calculator is pretty darn close to the United States yearly household median income of $57,000. So there you have it. You know, we've got websites that tell you how cheap it is to live in Panama, and yet the reality is that it's going to cost you the same amount to live in Panama, based on the figures we've just looked at, as living in the States without making any particular effort based on knowledge, experience, resources, access to everything that you possibly could know about living very well somewhere. Which, guys, it brings me to this. Take a look at our section that we have updated here at gringogoodsamaritans.com. Take a look at the courses, and you will see that we have a family here that lived for a couple of decades. How to live well in the new America on a Social Security budget. Go there and take a read. It's a short read. If that interests you, sign up for the course and take a look around and see what else you might like to take advantage of. We have a lot of really good information to share for expats, potential would-be expats, revolving door expats, those that have tried this stuff that everybody is saying on the internet and they've decided it isn't for them and they've gone back home. There's something here that we know how to do it. We want to let you know if you want to know it too. We're willing to help. I just want to be of service to y'all and help you out. There's a lot of good information here, but you won't know about it if you don't check it out. gringogoodsamaritans.com. Click on courses, and if it sounds interesting, sign up. Thanks for listening, guys.